Congressman Andrew Clyde. Welcome to the Alec Show.
Great to be with you, Alec.
Well, I'm honored to have you here. I want to start with this. I know that now, from what I hear, there's going to be a vote next week on a motion to vacate Speaker Johnson. I know a lot of people unhappy with the speaker, myself included. We know Mike Johnson's a great guy, family man, faith man, but he has failed in multiple ways, in my opinion. What's your take on this motion to vacate? Will it go through?
Well, I'm in that camp as well. I'm not happy with Speaker Mike Johnson and his leadership. As a matter of fact, I would call it an abysmal failure. In this particular calendar year, FY24, I don't know this Mike Johnson. He's not the guy that I thought I knew in 23 and earlier as the vice chair of our conference. But as speaker, there's just been a tremendous lack of leadership. And we have seen this in literally what I call the triple crown of failure here. And that is the two-part omnibus, which literally conservatives got almost no wins on whatsoever, and the left got basically everything they wanted. And then you had the FISA failure as well, where we could not even protect and defend the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, and he was a deciding vote in that particular amendment. So now we have a FISA reauthorization with no warrant requirement. The federal government can spy on us without warrants. And then we have the final one, which was the foreign aid to Ukraine, to Israel and Gaza, and then to Indochina or Taiwan. Nothing on that bill whatsoever about our border. The most important, literally, issue in the entire nation is our wide open southern border, which is costing the lives of over 100,000 Americans every solitary year. And we gave up our leverage. The leverage in the Ukraine bill, we gave that up, did not add border to it, and we gave them literally all of their priorities. The left got them. The Israel bill came through on a closed rule, so we couldn't even modify it to strip out the $9 billion of Gaza funding, which is literally Hamas funding as well. You can't feed Gaza without feeding Hamas. So, I mean, it's been a failure across the board. And I'm really disappointed in his leadership. We'll have to see what happens next week if Marjorie actually pulls the trigger on this. And I'm very disappointed that the speaker has not actually come out and disavowed the letter that the Democrats sent that said they were going to support his speakership. So he has literally become a Democrat speaker. I mean, if the Republican speaker doesn't have the confidence of the Republican conference, then he needs to resign.
Well said, Congressman. I'll tell you what, if this does go down next week and you have the Democrats standing up there calling and voting for Mike Johnson, that is going to be quite a scene to see if they go up there and actually save him as the speaker. But I agree with you. The American people are fed up. They feel betrayed by Mike Johnson because we thought we were going to be getting an America first leader. We thought we were going to get somebody finally putting, after what we went through with McCarthy, we're thinking, okay. And there were people that were doubtful right from the jump. I was hopeful. I thought, hey, maybe there's a reason why we got this switch, but he has been a disaster. And the 3 points you pointed out there is a triple crown of reasons to get rid of him, in my opinion. And just on the foreign aid package deal here with Ukraine, now I know we just sent another $60 billion and the war's not over yet. But now you have Zelensky talking about a 10-year plan. He's talking about a 10-year package to get more money. And it's like, we just gave another $60 billion. This doesn't sound like a plan to end the war. This sounds like a plan to prolong the war and keep the funding coming in.
Well, I think it's a plan to permanently support Ukraine's government. Because I think what we're seeing is literally Zelensky leveraging or blackmailing, I'll call it blackmailing Biden, because he's got information on Biden from 2015, from when he was vice president of our country, with regard to Burisma and the natural gas and Hunter Biden, all of that. I think Zelensky has that information and he's leveraging Biden. And as a result, we as taxpayers are footing the bill for this billion upon billions of dollars going into Ukraine, funding a war that is not our war.
And I think he does have something on Biden. It makes you wonder who's got something on Speaker Johnson for him to vote the way he's doing it too. So it seems like he may be compromised in that way as well. But yes, I believe, and look what happened. Donald Trump just made a phone call to ask about that. And since then, it's been all downhill for him. It's been impeachment, attack, and nonstop. And now we see him on trial. I'll get to that in just a second. But right now, the other thing breaking across the country is these pro-Hamas protests that are taking place on these Ivy League campuses. It's bad enough that these students are going there paying $90,000 a year to get an education that's going to serve them no purpose in the future, and they're going to beg the taxpayers to pay off and foot the bill for them doing it. Now they're acting like a bunch of crybabies. They're on campuses. Columbia finally had NYPD go in there to break this stuff up, but it's a disgrace to see what's going on in this country. What's your take on the protests breaking out?
Oh, you're absolutely right there. I mean, they tried it in my home state of Georgia, New York, that Palestinian, riot, they tried on the University of Georgia's campus. And boy, our Georgia State Patrol and our university police department took care of them, immediately. That's exactly what needs to happen across our country. The First Amendment is important to protect, but once you cross that line and you start rioting and you start destroying property and you start violating the rules that the universities have on encampments and other sort of things, at that point, then law enforcement needs to step in, arrest these people, haul them off to jail. The university needs to suspend or eject them completely from the university. I'm sorry, but these are not students who are there to learn. They are there to create havoc and to support terrorists. I mean, how can you support Hamas? How can you do that? How can you raise a Palestinian flag, take down an American flag and raise a Palestinian flag when the Hamas terrorists were the ones that infiltrated Israel and killed over 1,200, brutally murdered over 1,200 civilians and Israelis? I mean, it's unconscionable what they did. And now they're being treated as the victim? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree, Congressman. And I wonder, where are the parents of all of these kids that are getting involved in this? It's like you're getting involved in this Palestine-Israel thing. What about what's happening right here? Where's the protest for our open border? Where's the protest for the homeless veterans we got in this country? Where's the protest for all this stuff? We don't see it. Nobody's in an uproar. The fact that our country's being invaded. We're talking about Palestine over there, and you got queers for Palestine that would be murdered the minute they set foot in Gaza. None of this makes any sense. And the other thing too, they were crushing Kristi Noem over shooting the dog on a farm when she's 14. In Palestine, they murder dogs on a daily basis. They treat them like rats over there. There's no uproar over that. Nobody seems to care about it. So the whole thing to me is just another reason to take part in this thing. Wow, what a coincidence. It's an election year. And I think that has a lot to do with it. I think if we found out who was funding this, buying the tents, helping to organize, I think we'd all figure it out. I think it led back to some of the George Soros money, but there's other people, I think, funding this as well.
You're so right, Alec. I mean, the $9 billion that was in the Israel aid bill, that $9 billion for Gaza, you cannot literally send that money to Gaza and not have Hamas be completely involved in where that money goes and how it's being spent. You can't feed Gaza without feeding Hamas. And so therefore take the money that normally would go to feeding them and then allow Hamas to use it for guns and ammunition against Israel, another October 7th attack. So these folks on the college campuses, all right, if the campuses don't immediately take care of the issue and stop the rioting, then honestly, as an appropriator at the federal level, we just simply need to defund these educational institutions, these Ivy League schools. Honestly, if you look at what their endowments are, many of them, actually most of them, over $1 billion, they don't need federal funding anyway. We should immediately eliminate all of their federal funding.
Amen to that. Yeah, we're giving them the federal funding, which is us. There's no federal money. It's our money. And then on the other end, we're paying off their tuition too. So it's like they get the student loan paid for on the back end, and on the front end, they're getting our money from the jump. So the whole thing to me just seems so sad. And I feel bad for the parents who may have just signed their kids up to go to Columbia or one of these other Ivy League schools. And now they're seeing what's happening and saying, now it's late. We got to make a pivot here. We got to pull our kid and put him somewhere else, because there's no way you could send him to one of these lunatic schools where the faculty are even taking place. But let me take a pivot, because I know my time is limited here. We were talking about the open border, and I know that it's affecting, I know we say every state is a border state right now, but I know they're shipping illegal immigrants everywhere that they need to in order to help redistricting and to help to keep the Democrats in power. That's what this seems to be more about, rather than helping the poor struggling immigrant. How is the open border affecting Georgians as you see it?
Well, I mean, we just saw some statistics come out from DHS that said that they flew into Atlanta 1,796 illegals last year alone from other countries, not crossing the border, on foot, but actually flying them in from other countries. That's unconscionable. But you see the millions, and I mean millions of illegals crossing the border, bringing with them fentanyl, which is killing our children and killing our teenagers and our young adults. I mean, the greatest death toll from age 18 to 45, all right, is fentanyl. I mean, it's unconscionable that we are seeing 100,000, over 100,000 a year dying because of drug overdose problems, and most of that coming from synthetic opioids like fentanyl, and we're not closing the border. The border is where it's coming from. It's coming across the wide open border. And then you have the illegals coming across as well. That I think the nefarious plan of the Biden administration is to somehow get those registered to vote so they can vote in the federal election. There's talk of a federal ID, that DHS would be issuing a federal ID to these illegals. Under no circumstances should that ever be allowed. In fact, I hope when President Trump becomes our next president, number 47, that we have the largest deportation operation in the history of the world and send these people back from where they came.
We need it. And from what we're seeing even across the world, the strategy of importing a bunch of people into your country that hate you seems to not be working out well, no matter where it's taking place. And then just because of President Trump, and the last thing I'll talk about here is the Trump trials that we see going on. And then you have President Joe Biden even taunting a little bit of this, too, saying, oh, I'm campaigning. Trump's in court. I'm using my money on this. And Trump's is tied up in legal fees. And it's like, it's because of you. It's because President Biden is authorizing all this stuff to happen. We know it. And we see Donald Trump having to defend himself. It's obviously election interference, but they are trying to hamstring him at everywhere possible because they can't beat him on the issues. And they know that Trump is gaining, I think, more popularity than he has ever before. So what's your take on the Trump trials?
Well, I think it's backfiring on the Democrats, honestly, but they are trying their very best. They know they can't beat him on policy. They know that he had the most successful presidency of my lifetime when it comes to our economy. So they are trying their very best to use federal lawfare to take out the president, to throw him in jail, thinking that that will actually lower his poll numbers and make him less popular with the American people. But I think that the American people see right through that. What they're seeing is a fighter. They're seeing Donald Trump is fighting the establishment. He's fighting the swamp. And I believe firmly that Donald Trump is going to win and that we're going to have him as our next president. And he's going to help us clean up this establishment because this city, Washington, D.C., needs a complete overhaul. It needs a cleaning out.
Yeah, I have the faith that we'll get. You have to have the faith that we'll get that done because the other side is disastrous. And just to close it out here and let you go, you're in there. It just, what's the sentiment, Congressman, there in the House? It just seems so divided. It seems like nobody kind of knows who's who. People saying they're going to do one thing, vote the other way. It just seems like it's a mess. The majority got slimmer. Democrats are going to be supporting the speaker. So what is the sentiment? You got your finger on the pulse there. What's the tempo there in Washington?
There's a lack of leadership. There's a lack of leadership in the House. There's a lack of focus on Republican priorities. If we would focus on Republican priorities, we would bring unity back to the Republican conference and move forward as one, which is what we need to do. But in order to do that, we have to be focused on Republican priorities, like our commitment to America, which gave us the majority. We have to keep the majority going into this next election. If we don't have the majority and the Democrats take it, it will, and even if we get President Trump as our president, it will be nonstop impeachment after impeachment after impeachment. So we must keep the House, but we must literally focus on Republican priorities and Republican policy in order to unify our conference.
Great points. Congressman Andrew Clyde, it's been an honor to have you on. Love to have you on down the line anytime. Thanks for giving me a few minutes of your time here on the Alec Show.
Thank you, Alec.